I kind of know how school teachers must feel with that back to school frenzy of activity. It has been super busy. We've got fall Knitalong and Crochetalong stuff. We have D-Stash for Good stuff. Plus, I'm making a lot of stuff, so a lot to cover. I will see you on the other side. Welcome and thank you for joining me for this episode of Gary Knits, Gary Rides, a Craftivism podcast at the intersection of making things and doing good. My name is Gary. I'm a knitter and a crocheter. I am also a cyclist with AIDS Lifecycle, which is an annual 7-day, 545-mile bike ride from San Francisco to Los Angeles, raising money for the life-saving work of the San Francisco AIDS Foundation and the Los Angeles LGBT Center. As part of my fundraising for AIDS Lifecycle, I run a series of Knitalongs and Crochetalongs that I call the End AIDS Knitalongs and Crochetalongs. I also run an occasional fiber auction on Instagram called D-Stash for Good. We're going to talk about both of those things extensively here in a little bit. But thank you so much for taking some time out of your week to spend it with me, to see what I'm working on, and to get some ideas of how we can use our love of crafting to make the world a little bit better place. So, as I mentioned up front, it has been crazy busy. Not only do we have a series of house guests coming through, which is why I'm filming this at a little slightly different time than usual, trying to get things done before for the next round shows up, but we are in the midst of announcing the dyers and designers and projects for the Season 3 kickoff of the End AIDS Knitalongs and Crochetalongs. Also, submissions are open now for the first D-Stash for Good auction of this fundraising season for AIDS Lifecycle. So there's a lot to talk about this week. Otherwise, I'm hoping it's going to be kind of a short episode because I don't have too much on the Craftivism side, because I'm going to kind of use all of the Knitalong and Crochetalong stuff to cover that. But let's briefly talk about where we are in the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs. We've still got the Pride Knitalong and Crochetalong from last season wrapping up in the next week, so it ends on the 31st. So you've got 5 days from when I'm filming this to get your photos of your WIPs and your FOs uploaded to either Instagram using these hashtags or to our Ravelry group. I should have mentioned up front that you can find me on Instagram at Gary Knits, Gary Rides. I'm also on Ravelry as Gary Knits and Rides, and on Ravelry we have a group for the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs called End AIDS KAL/CAL. So that's where one of the places you can post your photos of WIPs and FOs to get entered into the final rounds of giveaways for the Pride 23 Knitalongs and Crochetalongs. I showed the prizes on my last episode. They're pretty amazing for these final rounds of prizes. So if you haven't gotten your things uploaded, definitely get that done in the next couple of days. So that is going to wrap up, and the Season 3 kickoff for End AIDS Knitalongs and Crochetalongs won't actually cast on until September 1st. So those will, like all of my Knitalongs and Crochetalongs, run for 2 months. So that'll be September 1st through the end of October. But we are rolling out the announcements of the projects and the dyers and designers right now over the next week or so. We started earlier this week, had one yesterday, we'll have one tomorrow, or today probably as you're seeing this, and then a couple into next week. And the reason why we do the rollout so early is to give the dyers enough time to run the yarn kit sales as pre-orders, because one of my great fears in running these and teaming up with indie dyers and designers is that someone would get stuck with inventory for one of the projects. So we almost always do it as a pre-order, which is open for a couple of weeks, which gives the dyer enough time to get the yarn dyed up, shipped out, so that people have it in time for the cast on date. But if you are shopping for your yarn elsewhere, don't panic about having everything set up for the cast on date. That's one of the reasons why I always make these 2 months, is so that people have time to do this on a relaxed basis and no stress around my Knitalongs and Crochetalongs. We value participation instead of completion, which is why there are way more prizes for WIPs than there are for FOs. So having fun is the number one goal, and there's no fun in stress. So we have been rolling those out. So if you joined me earlier this week, you have already seen the Star Rider mittens and the Stars Align hat set from Melissa at Melissa K Designs, using yarn from Monica at UP North Yarns, or Up North Yarns. I'm going to show those patterns and the yarn up close and personal at the Craftivism end of this thing, but here's a picture of them. And then if you joined me yesterday, you would have seen the first of the Crochetalong projects. Again, it's a hat and mitt set, this time by Jinan at Cerulean Orchid. It is her rainbow eucalyptus pattern, a really beautiful little mini cabled hat and mitten pattern that is being done in yarn from Torch Teal Knits. It is her After the Storm colorway, beautiful speckled colorway. If I have photos of them, I will post them up here, and then I will hopefully talk about it a little bit more in terms of all the details and pricing and everything at the end of the episode. I'm also going to compile all of the Knitalong and Crochetalong information as it is rolled out into one bonus episode here on YouTube, so you can find it all the information in one place. I'm also going to post the Instagram lives that I've done with all of the dyers and designers, so you can get to know them a little bit better as well. That'll be short little 30-minute videos. They're over on Instagram saved, but if you want to find them here, they'll be here as well. So that is going on. We've got 3 more to reveal. So one is going to happen later today if you're seeing this on Friday when it first goes up. One of them is going to be later today. That is going to be the second Knitalong project. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I'm very, very excited. It's going to be our first color work project that we've done in the N8's Knitalongs and Crochetalongs. And then Saturday, we will have the unveiling of the sock Knitalong. Always a very, very popular Knitalong is to have a sock, and people always ask if I'm going to have a sock, and so I decided for this season 3 kickoff, we are going big. We're keeping the projects small because they're all accessories, but we have the most number of projects that we've ever had in one of the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs. So we have 7 projects total across 5 designers and 5 dyers. So on Saturday, we will unveil the sock pattern and dyer, and then next week on the 2nd, we will have the final crochet project, one that I'm super duper excited about. This designer does some really funky and amazing work, and I'm really excited to be working with her. So several more to come. Stay tuned over on Instagram. They will be live, and then again I will post them over here. So then you will have a couple weeks for all of the yarn to be purchased, and then get your pattern set up, and we will cast on September 1st. Again, portions of yarn sales and portions of pattern sales will go to AIDS Lifecycle. Several of the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs this time around are using an entry ticket model, which means that you will buy the pattern directly from the designer. Then I will have an entry ticket up on my Ko-fi page, which is linked down below, for $3, and that is your entry ticket into the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs to be eligible for the giveaway prizes. I try to be very transparent about how this all works from the fundraising side of things. Sometimes the designers want to build that into the price of a pattern, but oftentimes, especially if it's an existing pattern that they've been working with, or they have a very sort of set up, established pricing plan for their patterns, we just do the entry ticket model where you buy the ticket directly from me. That's the fundraising piece of it, and then you buy the pattern directly from the designer. So all the details from that are going to be down below, along with everything that I talk about today in the show notes. Here is, sorry, I'm over here. Nope, over here today. Here is a QR code for the show notes, so you can scan that if you're watching this on your television. So that is the Knitalong and the Crochetalong side of things. Just because I always need to bite off more than I can chew, we are also launching the first of the D-Stash for Good auctions for this AIDS Lifecycle fundraising season, which kicks off August 1st, the fundraising season, not the D-Stash for Good auction. So the submission form, again, it will be linked down below, is available now. That is going to be live until the 4th of August, so that's the end of next week, or until we hit 350 submissions, whichever comes first. That is about the limit I have found in terms of what I can manage in terms of managing the auction itself. We tried one that was like 450, and it got just to be too much. So that seems to be a manageable number in terms of both my end of things and what I've heard from participants in terms of like the number of things that they can scroll through to shop. So the submission form is up. It is pretty straightforward. You just need to give me some details on the yarn. There's kind of a set format to do it so that everything is pretty consistent, and then take some pictures and upload that, and then I will get that put into Instagram ahead of the auction start. The timing for the auction start is a little bit flexible. I think I'm scheduled to do it kicking off on the 14th or 15th of August. It all really depends on how much time it takes me to get things uploaded to Instagram. So Instagram has some restraints I have found over time in terms of how many things I can post into that account in a given period of time before they lock me down, which means then I'm stuck for 2 or 3 days without being able to do anything. So I've kind of found the pace that I need to upload these things at. I've made some tweaks to the way that the auctions run in terms of organization. So now within the feed, everything is organized by yarn weight, and then within each weight, I try to alphabetize it by dyer. So it makes things a little easier for people to scroll through and then click and save things to their favorites so they can watch the bidding on certain items. So if you have any questions about how the D-Stash works, please let me know. Basically, the idea is you have a chance to sell your yarn that you think would be better off in someone else's home. If you want to make a little extra money, you can keep up to 50% of whatever the sales price is, and you're going to be donating 50%, at least 50% to my AIDS Lifecycle fundraising. So that's the basic gist of how it works. The bidding's all done on Instagram. If you have any questions, just shoot me a comment down below, and I'm happy to walk you through it. So those are both going on simultaneously. I really want to hit the ground running this year in terms of the fundraising, because as I think I've said before, this is the year where I am really hoping to hit my $200,000 long-term goal for fundraising, so that I can take a little bit of a break from the cycling and training each spring and focus on some other things instead of riding my bike 4 or 5 times a day, 4 or 5 times a week. So that is it on the kind of logistics and things that are going on the fundraising AIDS Lifecycle side of things. Why don't we talk about some knitting and crocheting? I have WIPs and FOs and in the wings this week. I feel like I've been very productive on the making side with the Knitalongs and the D-Stash coming. I feel like my productivity is going to diminish a little bit just because I'm going to be sitting in front of the computer getting things uploaded to the auction. But I'm glad that I've got some things to show in terms of finished objects. The first finished object is actually the Crochetalong project from the Pride Crochetalong. This is and it's going to be tough to show here, so once I show it here, I'll pop a picture up in a minute of me holding it up full size. But this is the In the Forest of the Night cardigan designed by Elizabeth Desamore of Desamore Design. So that is the back of it. Here is the front. Now it's an open cardigan, so it's really hard to sort of get it here, but it has a I made this for my sister, so I'm dropping it in the mail as soon as I finish filming here. She wanted the sleeveless version, so it just has these little, almost teeny tiny little partial sleeves here. And then it's an open front cardigan. We measured it on her. She wanted it a little bit longer than what the pattern called for, so I did an extra pattern repeat. So hopefully it fits. It's hard. It's hard for me to tell. I tried to put it on, and it looked a little weird in terms of. I think my shoulders are a little wider than what the pattern would call for, and my chest is probably a little bit smaller than what the pattern would call for. So it looked a little out of sorts on me, but I'm hoping that it fits her and she can get some good use out of it. It's a DK weight pattern, and the dyer that we had that Elizabeth had teamed up with for this project was Brooke at Fully Spun. This is her merino cotton base, so it's 50-50 merino cotton. This is the Majestic colorway. I absolutely loved working with this yarn. I love the way that this color came out on this base. If you've seen her Majestic color on one of her 100% wool bases, it's a lot more vibrant, so this kind of muted it out and kind of pasteled it a little bit. But I love the way it turned out. Like I said, hopefully it will fit well. I had a lot of fun with this project. Very sort of, I would say, adventurous, beginner friendly in terms of once you get the pattern repeat set, it's pretty straightforward. From there, you're essentially just making a giant rectangle, and then there's some origami magic at the end to get the sleeves done. And yeah, I think an adventurous beginner could definitely pull that off. As I mentioned, I think before, and it has been mentioned in the Ravelry pages, there's one row of the pattern on the panels once you split at the top. It's row 6. That's incorrect across all three panels. You'll find it. You'll realize it immediately, and if you just stay in the pattern, that's all you really need to do. There's nothing, because there's very little shaping or anything like that in the pattern. You're basically just repeating the pattern back and forth, but you've kind of split it into three sections at the top. So I really enjoyed the project. Hopefully she enjoys it, and thank you, Brooke and Elizabeth, for participating in the Crochetalong for Pride this year. I keep trying, hoping to continue to build the Crochetalong side of things. The knitting side of things of the Knitalongs is pretty strong, but I think I'm just not as plugged in the crochet world in terms of connecting with people to get them excited. I'm hoping that this fall season 3 kickoff, because we're just working on small projects, that we're able to get a few more people in on the crochet side. Plus the crochet projects that we have lined up are really, really fun and amazing. So if you know any crocheters, send them my way, and hopefully we can get them involved in the Crochetalong. The second FO that I have, I'm going to have to go back in time to show you because it has already been handed off to its recipient. So without further ado, here is Gary from the past. Thank you, future Gary, and welcome to a week ago. I just wanted to show you this FO because I've got to deliver it to my mother in between now and when I'm going to film the real episode. So this is the Twiddle Muff. I had talked about it a couple episodes ago. These are for Alzheimer's patients. Also, I guess they can be used for children with ADHD or on the autism spectrum. They are basically sensory items with lots of little interesting textures and colors and things like that to keep people's hands busy and occupied. So my Mom had asked me to knit up a sample of one to take to the memory care unit of the community associated with the community that they live in, and she was going to give it to the staff there and see how they liked it, how the patients liked it, and if they liked it, then I was going to maybe go over to the knitting group in my mom and dad's community and walk them through how to make them. They're not difficult at all, but I know that they mainly just knit garter stitch prayer shawls, so maybe some of them aren't familiar with knitting in the round and some of the different textures and things like that. So I just wanted to walk. So this is all done in Knit Picks Brava Bulky, and you basically just knit a tube. What you do is just add textures, and so it's really a fun way to play around with a knit or a stitch book library kind of thing and play around. So you can see here, I started with a ribbing, added some 1x1 twisted stitches. I had this novelty yarn, I think it's called like That 70s Yarn by Lion Brand, that I picked up in someone's D-stash, knowing specifically that I was going to be making these things, and then having some fun, or at least I don't know if it's fun, but sort of textured novelty yarn would be something that I wanted. So I was able to get that cheap. My mom had these little buttons or beads that are in the shape of little elephants, and there's a lion, I think, in there. But I just threw them in there. I have some other beads that can be used. I put some baubles on, and then another round of ribbing and a purl row, which is basically the turning row, because you're going to turn this inside out, and so seam the ends together. Some I think it's called Fable Fur. It's also from Knit Picks. I got during their sale. I did some of the little Stephen West noodles shrimp from Shellography, and then I started in on a cable chart, but I wasn't able to get like the full repeat of it done, so it just kind of ends there, and then I bound off. So I used up almost all of a skein of Brava, and then what I'm going to do after I film this a little bit, pull it inside out so that there are textures and things on both the inside and the outside, so people can put their hands in, hence the name Twiddle Muff, and play around with it that way. And then I'm just going to seam them up together here. But I wanted to show it before I did that and send it off, dropped it off to my mom. Tomorrow we're going to have lunch with them. One of the things they do suggest that you can do is to get some crinkly plastic or paper and sew that into the between the two layers, so that there is also some sound piece of it. Because I have the noodles would have a big open space, I didn't want to do that because I thought someone could get their hands in there and then pull on the plastic, and it could, or the crinkly paper or whatever you put in there, and it could come loose. But I think if you did one that you were just doing baubles and textures and things like that, you could put that in there to add that sort of sound element to it. So that is the Twiddle Muff, and if all goes well, I may be teaching some elderly knitters how to make these for the residents in the memory care unit of the community they live in. So that's it. Back to the future. Welcome back to the present. I hope you enjoyed that. I really had fun with that Twiddle Muff project. It was super duper fast, which was great, and kind of just what I needed as a palette cleanser after having finished a big project like the blanket I just did and this the cardigan, the crochet cardigan. And hopefully, I have not heard back from my mom yet. She took it to the memory care residence that's affiliated with the community that she lives in, and I have not heard yet back how the staff and the residents found those. But if they enjoyed them, I'm really hoping that I can take that basic recipe, maybe write some things down, because my mom indicated that the folks in her knitting group there at the in her community would really like a written pattern, that they're not going to freestyle it. So make some decisions in terms of the baubles and the design, and write it all down for them, and then hopefully go over there and show them how to make it. I mean, it's very, very simple. You're just knitting a tube and taking half of it inside out. So I will report back on the success or failure of the Twiddle Muff and whether or not I become a Twiddle Muff knitting instructor at the senior senior apartment complex. In terms of WIPs, I have a couple things that are new. I have a couple of things that have been, or one thing that's been in process for a while, and that is the oh my gosh, where is it? Oh, here it is. Sorry. That is the Pin Up Rainbow Shawl, which was the other Pride project for the Knitalong side of things this June, July. This is the pattern by Samantha at Whimsical Wood Yarn Co. And we are using her yarn. Let me see if I can find if I'm on the right side. Yep, this is the right side. So it is a assigned pooling pattern, and for the color, where the color changes happen, you make these little rainbows. It has been a bit slow going for me, not because it's particularly difficult. It's just one of these types of projects that's not quite TV knitting for me, because I have to not only focus on making the rainbows, which is, takes some manipulation of the yarn, but then you also have to pay attention after you've made the rainbow. So this is a made rainbow here. And then you have to pay attention, because several rows after you've made the rainbow, when you come back to it, you pin it up on both sides, so that on the back side, you don't get quite the rainbows, but you get something that looks a little tidier than just, you can see where I forgot to do one here. Forgot to pin this one up, and so it just becomes, it's kind of a loose thing on the back. So she has you pin them up on the back to make it a little tidier. Some people have not, who have been working on it, have not been doing that, and I think that's totally fine. So there's just a little more concentration required, or you get into that situation that I just showed you where I've forgotten to pin one up on the back. I don't think I've forgotten to pin one up on the front yet. Famous last words. But I'm sure it will happen, and then I'll have to figure out if I just kind of go in with some yarn at the end and manually pin it up after everything's said and done. But I have been having fun with it. It's just not one of those things that I can sit and mindlessly do while watching TV. And I have had not great experience trying to do this in the car. Just the bumping of the car when I'm trying to go back and forth to make the rainbows has not been super successful. So I'm going to continue to plug away on it. Obviously, we've only got 5 days left in the Knitalong, and I am not going to get it finished by then. But this will continue into the fall for me, and I will just keep plugging away on it. And I'm sure by the end of the year, I will have gotten through a skein and a half of the yarn. I don't know if I'm going to need the full 2 skeins, just because it's going to get pretty big pretty quickly. But anyway, Pin Up Rainbows Shawl by Whimsical Wood Yarn Co. in some of her assigned pooling yarn that she dyed up especially for the Knitalongs. And it's been really fun on our weekly Zoom calls. So we do a weekly Zoom on Tuesday evenings for the Knitalong Crochetalong, although anyone is welcome. And it's been really fun to see how different people have tackled that project. Some people have found the rainbows challenging and shifted to another assigned pooling special stitch to great results. Valerie, who I just got to spend some time with here in Southern California, she did a whole sort of sampler. She changed the shawl design and did sort of a sampler where she played around with a bunch of different assigned pooling stitches. So some sections are little flowers, and some sections are little zigzags, and some sections are the rainbows. And that's really cool. And then some people have come up with some different techniques in terms of making the rainbows, when to pin them up. So it's been a really fun project from that perspective, that people have felt really emboldened to experiment with different techniques and things like that. So I've really enjoyed the assigned pooling. I've showed some yarn that I got from Erin at Fiber Hustle that I'm going to hopefully, sometime in the winter or early spring, turn into another shawl for myself, just because I've had a really good time with that assigned pooling technique. So that's the Pin Up Rainbow Shawl, wrapping up the Pride Knitalong. The next project that I have started and almost finished. I think I showed this last time. This is the Pop-Tart shawl by Tammy Gore. It is written as a single skein pattern. I was using this variegated blue. Lost my stitch stopper. I was using this variegated blue from Carolyn Dick, C. Dick Designs. And it was a one-of-a-kind called Shark Boy that I won in a Radical Threads giveaway, I believe. And I ran, or was going to run short for sure. I finished the last lace section, and then you had a garter section and a bind off. And I don't know, I probably had 10 grams left. I did not really pay attention to what the pattern said in terms of, what the yardage was, nor did I do a gauge swatch. So shame on me on both counts. But I went into the stash and found this solid blue, which is from Ken Yarn, from his charcuterie collection that he did, I think early this year or late last year. And this is blueberry. So it was a perfect match for the darker blue in the shawl. This one is going to be tough to see until it's blocked out, because the instructions are to aggressively block it, which is what you're going to have to do to make these lace panels really pop out. But this is going to, so I'm done with the garter section. I've started the bind off. It's the first time I'm ever doing this. It is you can see, a picot bind off. It took me a couple of attempts at the instructions to get it right. So these first picots are a little sad. But I think I lost, there we go. Took that stitch out. Hopefully I didn't drop anything. But I think I finally got it. And so it's just, it's a little slower than a typical bind off, because you're, casting on X and then binding off X and then casting on more. So I will probably have this, I made great progress on this on my bus ride this week to our very first Hollywood Bowl concert of the season. So I expect that maybe sitting around this week while our house guests are here and chit-chatting, that I'll be able to work on that and get that finished up. Plenty of time. That doesn't need to be done until mid-August, when a friend of ours from Italy is coming to visit us, and it is a gift for him to take back with him to another one of our friends in Florence. So that is the Pop-Tart shawl by Tammy Gore. The other project, which is a new cast on, also, not a shawl. It is to replace a shawl, or to maybe replace a shawl. I was watching Carrie over at the Creative Obsession, and she was contemplating and then went ahead to start a make-along for a cowl. I'm going to get the name. It's called the Knit Chat Cowl, or Knit Chat Cowl by Chit Chat Knits. So it's a tongue twister. And it's a single skein cowl, but it is done in self-striping yarn. And so I was very excited, because I have a ton of self-striping yarn, and I'm a slow sock knitter, so the speed at which I get through it versus the speed with which I seem to accumulate it, the balance is off. So I was excited for a project, because I really haven't found many projects. If you know of any more, please drop them down below, that use self-striping sock yarn in something other than in a sock, because that would be really fun to have some more of those in my quiver. And so I was like, yeah, let's cast on that, because we certainly, don't have enough things already cast on. We can always have one more. The thought being behind it, one, she wanted to get this done by August 31st, so I have a little bit of a timetable. It's a single skein project. It's also, looking at it, a fairly straightforward project. And so I'm hoping that this can, replace some of the other stuff, the Pop-Tart shawl for sure, that has been good TV and car knitting for me. So I always like to have at least one of those things on the needles. The other thought being that I really wanted to have a shawl completed by Rhinebeck to take with me. I have already wound the yarn this last week. There's still a shot it could happen. It's the Sun Walker shawl by Melanie Berg. Here is a photo of it. I am going to be using some tweed sock yarn from Treehouse Knits from Lauren's Stranger Things collection in the Most Metal Ever colorway. And maybe next episode, depending on how things go, I can pull that out and show you. But I'm not super confident that I'm going to be able to get that started and done by Rhinebeck, given what I'm about to talk to you about next. But I thought maybe I could get a cowl done. So that was the idea. This may be the Rhinebeck shawl replacement in a cowl form. Also, if it's warm, I might not need a full shawl. I could maybe just throw this on. So anyway, this is the Knit Chat cowl by Chit Chat Knits. I had mentioned that I had got to meet Valerie, who is one of the Zoomers on our weekly Zooms, and she was in Southern California visiting family from Bolivia. And so while she was here, she had a day where she didn't have anything else going on and wanted to get together, and so we did a little mini yarn tour of the LA area. First stop, we went out to Redlands, which is on the way to Palm Springs. It's a bit of a drive, but she had a relationship, met some people online that worked at this yarn store I had never been to called Hands On Knitting Center. Really wonderful store, very well stocked. Probably the biggest yarn store local yarn store that I've seen in the LA area. They had a ton of great yarn and very, very friendly. So she got some project quantities worth of stuff there. She had some gift certificates to spend, so that was really fun. Then we headed back into town and stopped at Wool House in Pasadena, which I have been to before when Stitches was in Pasadena. It's a little out of the way for me as a local yarn store, but it is a really, really wonderful little shop. They have a ton of Brooklyn tweed, so it's just really great to get in there, to be able to get in there and sort of touch all the Brooklyn tweed. They have like a full, beautiful wall of color of Brooklyn tweed. But while we were there, Valerie wanted to pick up a skein of hand-dyed yarn for a single skein shawl pattern, and they have all their hand-dyed yarn upstairs, and so she went up and she picked up this skein of like a tonal gray that she was trying to put together a shawl that could be worn with a lot of different things. So she picked out this tonal gray, very pretty, and we go downstairs and she's checking out, and the woman who checks her out says, "Oh, this is a very local dyer here in Pasadena," and the dyer is right there, sitting at the table, and she was working on a project. So we got to meet the dyer, Angela, from Woolly Warbler Yarns, or Woolly Warbler Fiber. I'll put it up here. But she was very charming, and it was just great to meet her. And so it was very exciting that she got to meet the dyer for the yarn that she had bought. And then we ended up at my local yarn store, the Knitting Tree LA, and this is a long-winded version of getting to the story of the Knit Nat cowl. But at Knitting Tree, I picked up a ball of yarn that I thought would work well, and I'm going to show you that when we get to Acquisitions, because I brought it home and decided I didn't think it was going to work for the project, just because as I was looking at it and thinking about wearing it up to my skin, it has a lot of yellow in it, and I thought it wouldn't look good. So what I did get from my stash was I had this ball of Zalwer Ball Crazy that I was going to make socks out of, but it is colors, this is the blue and the maroon, perfect for a lot of the clothes that I wear. So that's what I've started working on. I'm not too far into it. I'm just into the first sort of ruched section. There's a ruche section and there's an eyelet section, but it's been fun so far, and I'm loving seeing the color changing on this yarn. And I think it'll be a great project for Hollywood Bowl bus rides, car knitting, and sitting around watching TV. So hopefully I can get that. I think it's going to go pretty quickly. Hopefully I'll get that done in the next next month or so, and have that ready to go for Rhinebeck. And if I don't make the Sunwalker shawl, then at least I will have that to wear, in addition to my Rhinebeck sweater. So we're going to talk about this Rhinebeck sweater. So I keep saying that this is my first sweater, which is not entirely true. It is my first sweater for me that I've ever made, and it is going to be my first attempt at a pullover sweater. So the only other adult human sweater that I have made is a cardigan that I made for my husband a year and a half or so ago. He picked out the yarn, he picked out the pattern. It was at that point probably the most challenging thing I'd ever worked on. Probably still. It was charcoal gray, and it was cable-ish. It was 1/1 twisted cables. It was a pattern called Little Waves. I'll post a picture of the I can't do this right this time. Post the picture of it up here. The Little Waves pattern from Brooklyn Tweed, and I did it in a Brooklyn Tweed yarn. But it was challenging, but we made it through, and he loves it, so that's great. But I've never made a sweater for myself, and I wanted to make a pullover, so I keep saying this is my first sweater. And I have gone through it so far with this this sweater. It's been challenging, not in that it's a difficult pattern, just that I keep making mistakes, and I'm unhappy with the mistakes. I'm much harder, I think, on myself than I probably need to be, but that's, for another discussion. Anyway, it is living in my chip basket from the Fiber Hustle guys, which I absolutely love and is perfect for this project, which is not going to be any sort of traveling project. I am making the Painting Honeycombs sweater by Stephen West. Here's a picture of it in its completed form. I've decided not to do multiple colors in the honeycomb section. I'm using the single variegated yarn. And what I'm doing in the base color is this Shibui knits, R.I.P. Shibui knits. It is their Haven base, which is a, I think it's 90-10 merino cashmere. And then for the colors, I'm using this skein of Fully Spun, which is in Brooke's Rum Punch colorway. And I should have mentioned this when I mentioned Fully Spun from the cardigan, but Brooke is shutting down, at least for the time being, her dyeing business, and so she's running a sale on everything that she has. I think it's 30% off, plus you can also do some dye to orders if you get those in the next few days. So if there's anything, she has absolutely gorgeous yarn. Head over to I Am Fully Spun on Instagram and check out what she has in stock, because you can get a great deal on that. So anyway, here is where we are on the Painting Honeycombs sweater. I had been calling it Painted Honeycombs sweater, and I was joking to the Zoom group that maybe part of the reasons I've had such tribulations with it is because I was misnaming it and calling it by the wrong name. So you can see I am into the second round of the color work. It doesn't show as much unless I stretch it out, so that means I think it's probably going to show better when it's actually worn. I am making, I think, the size small. I swatched twice. I swatched once using the prescribed needle sizes, which I think were a US 6, I think I'm down to a 5 now. And my gauge came out a little bit too loose, so I went down to needle size. It was still not exact, so I think it called for 22 stitches over 4 inches and 30 rows. The first swatch I did, I got 21. I went down to needle size, I got 21 and a half. And I just decided not to go down another needle size and just sort of hope for the best. So the gauge was given in the pattern unblocked, and that's what I used as well. I also blocked it, and it didn't really seem to change my gauge too much. The row gauge seemed fine. The stitch gauge was where it was slightly looser. So I'm just hoping that it doesn't get too big. So unlike the way the pattern is written, I did not cast on for the neck. One of my main concerns in knitting a pullover sweater for myself and is that most of the men's hand knit sweaters that I see, I hate the necks and the way that the necks look. They're just too stretched out. And so I'm hoping that by doing a provisional cast on and going back and adding the neckline later, that I will be able to play with it to try to get it to a size that fits me. I have a pretty small neck relative to most menswear, and so I'm probably going to have to decrease a little faster and maybe go a little bit higher on the neck to make that work. So that was the first challenge was swatching. It didn't work out for me. I had to learn how to do provisional cast on, so that was fun. And then we got to the short rows for shapings for the back, and that went pretty well. I don't think I had done short rows in the Stephen West method, and I just sort of followed his tutorial rather than trying to do something new. Where I did change was once you finish the short rows, there's some increasing that happens to get you to the bigger shape to start the yoke, and he has you. The pattern is written to do, X number of stitches and then just do a backward loop cast on. And so I did that, and I hated it. I think and maybe I was doing it wrong, but I looked at several different videos. It just left a hole. Like I couldn't get it so it didn't leave a little noticeable, not a hole like a yarn over hole, but like just a little blip in the fabric. And maybe that would have worked out with blocking. I didn't know, but it looked terrible to me. And so I went back and did some research, pulled out my increases and decreases book, and ended up settling on just a make one. You're doing it on a purl side, so it was a purl make one, and it's still. I don't want this to stopper. It's still noticeable to me. I mean, you probably can't see it, which is probably. But there, I can still sort of see where there's these little blops where the increases happened, but it's far less noticeable than using that backward loop cast on. So I don't know if anyone has any really good invisible increases on a purl side for a fabric, or if you have experience doing this and know that these things are just going to block out, or they're just only noticeable because you're looking at it up close and it's the only fabric you have in front of you, and as this thing grows it's just going to sort of blend in. Any of those things could be true, but it really frustrated me that I was very short into the pattern and was having to already start to do something different than how things were written. We persevered and moved on past that, and then got into the color work section. So the other thing that I, having never knit a pullover sweater, never knit a top-down sweater, the cardigan I worked was bottom up. One thing I did not realize was, to me, it feels like I'm knitting this thing upside down. So you did the short rows, and then he has you basically shift the beginning of row around to the back side, or maybe the reverse. I'm saying the reverse. Yeah, no, to the back of the neck, and then that's where you start doing the yoke. And I got it set up, and I was like, I'm doing exactly what he says, and I would look at it, and I was like, this doesn't feel right. It feels like I'm doing something wrong, and I was concerned that I was going to start like knitting it inside out, and finally, after a couple false starts and tinking back and trying it again and trying to figure out if there was another way to manipulate it to make it feel like I was knitting in the right direction, I just went with it, and it felt a little awkward at first, but I'm pretty sure I'm doing it right. Let me know if I'm not. And started in on the color work section, and then got through the first round where I joined the color work. The join wasn't great, and then somewhere along the way right at the beginning of round, I felt like I had dropped, there was a stitch missing. Or either I'd missed an increase on the increase round or something, but there was a stitch missing, and I did a make one to try to make it work, and it was just really ugly. And so after I finished the first colorwork round, I ripped it all out and went back to the beginning of that colorwork round, redid the increase row, got the right number, and then started in. So it has been a lot of fits and starts and ripping out and starting over. I feel like I'm in a good place now. I'm liking how the colors are working. I think it's going to be fun to not have the way that the pattern shows with a different color each round of color work, and just kind of have the variegation in this color kind of do that work. So, and I'm loving the Shibui Cashmere Merino is very, very, very soft. So fingers crossed we're through the worst of the trial and error and learning mistakes. I'm in the second round here. There's some increasing happening when you're doing the color works. I was a little concerned. It's a slip stitch color work pattern. There's only a little 3-stitch float that you have to carry, but I have made some hats before where you have a slip stitch with, more than just one float, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm cognizant of the fact that I want to keep a little slack in that line so that it doesn't bunch up around the chest. And then hopefully I'll get through the yoke relatively quickly, and then we'll be just into like stockinette stitching down. The pattern does not call for any shaping below the chest, but I think I'm going to. I don't want a big baggy sweater around my middle, so I think I will try to do a little bit of shaping so it tapers down a little bit from the chest size down to the waist. I'm not going to make it like super tight, but just pull it in a little bit, and then we'll go and see. So hopefully, the next big challenge is going to be coming back and doing the neck, but it should be pretty straightforward, from here on out. I'm hoping to get the bulk of this done before we go on vacation in September, so that I don't have too much to wrap up by the time we get back, because I think I'll only have like a week or so in between our vacation ending and me going to Rhinebeck. So that's it. Rhinebeck sweater. Frustration early. Hopefully we're through it, and it will be smooth sailing from here on out. If anyone out there has made this sweater, let me know how it went for you. If there were any tips and tricks you might have along the way in terms of things that I'm missing or things that I may have ahead of me that I haven't foreseen yet, just let me know. But I'm so far, at least now, in a good place with this. So hopefully I can continue that. So that is it in terms of the WIPs. I do have a couple of things that one thing I'm going to show that is in the wings. It's something that I'm going to probably start swatching, and then probably won't work on until after the fall Knitalongs and Crochetalongs wrap up and we move into kind of the holiday season. But it is, after having just finished a blanket and been saying how much I was glad to have a big blanket project done, I'm starting another blanket. It is a gift for someone that has been promised. It is living in my Adela and the Magpies tote bag from the collab that they did this spring summer. But this is the pattern. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but I'll post it up. It's called the Kurduck blanket. There it is. I'll post a picture of it up as well. It's by Carol Feller, who I'm very excited that I'm going to get to meet here hopefully soon. And it is a very cabley, almost Aran sweater kind of blanket that a friend of mine is going to get as a housewarming present. And I'm doing it in Plymouth yarn. It is called Quaker Hill. It is a 50-50 Highland wool alpaca blend. I think it's going to look really pretty with all those cables and just be super soft and fuzzy as a blanket. But I think this will probably surpass the Little Waves sweater that I made for my husband in terms of the most challenging thing that I've knit in terms of from a pattern perspective, not from a shaping and maybe construction perspective. But with all of those cables on it, I've kind of looked ahead. I think there are 5 or 6 different cable charts, and so you're having to you're working it across. So you've got to work 6 cable charts, but you work it's like A B C D E, but then you do like A B C, C B A E D E, across. So that's going to be a challenge in logistics. And we were talking about last night on the Zoom call on different techniques that people have had for working very wide multi chart cable patterns, from whiteboards to maybe looking at Knit Companion as an option. I've never ever used it, but I was told, and maybe this is not true, but that it had the ability to sort of cut and paste multiple charts into one big chart that you can kind of follow across. I'm looking forward to getting started at it. I'm just going to do some swatching. I'm going to probably just do the stockinette, and I think it's moss stitch swatches, and then do one of the cables just to make sure that things are generally on track. It's a blanket. The gauge isn't super duper important, but I do have I want to make sure I'm not going to run out of the yarn. So I will keep you abreast of that as that progresses. But that's it for the actual making. So we can talk a little bit about acquisitions. Not a ton to talk about this time. As I mentioned, I went with my friend Valerie on a little yarn tour of Los Angeles County, or not even, because we went to Riverside County, so Los Angeles area. And I picked up a skein of yarn at the Knitting Tree LA that I thought I was going to be using for the Knit Chat cowl. This is what I got. It's a brand I don't know anything about. It's called Online, and this is Super Sock. It looks like German. And it is a self-striping sock yarn, but as you can see, while it has blue, which is my go-to color, when I got it home and sort of like looked at it a little bit more, it had a lot of this yellow and orange color, and I didn't think, given my coloring, that having that much sort of pale yellow around my face was going to be a good look for me. So this will go back into the stash and will probably become socks at some point, unless I find another pattern that uses self-striping sock yarn for some other project. But I think that would be a nice pair of socks. It is 75% virgin wool, 25% polyamide, and yeah, fingering weight, made in Germany. I think it's made in Italy, but it's a German company. Anyway, Online, I'd never heard of them. The other thing that I acquired, because I can't stop myself sometimes, a dyer that was new to me called Mud Punch did a shop update. She is out of Canada. Chantel is her name. I can't remember where in Canada, but I think it's BC. I think it's somewhere out west. Beautiful self-striping sock yarn, and this color just sort of jumped out at me because it's a little more muted than most of what I have in my self-striping repertoire. So this is called Rainy Clay. It is on her Slash self-striping sock base, which is 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon, 385 yards to 110 grams. So Rainy Clay, I think that's really, really pretty. She her website's great in terms of she knits them all up, and so you can see how they stripe. But I'm excited at some point to make some socks out of that. And then not necessarily an acquisition, and it's not really heart mail because it's not for me to give away, but I want to give away on from the Professor Pearl. Nicole at Professor Pearl podcast was celebrating her 3,000th subscriber, and she had a little contest in the comments of her YouTube channel. You should definitely go check out what she does over there. She's really, really interesting. She's a math education professor and a designer as well. So she has a new shawl pattern out, which was lovely. But anyway, I was the winner of this 50-gram self-striping sock set from Zebra Yarns, and I think these are going to become my first ever shorty socks. So someone, Valerie from Creations by Valerie, pointed me in the direction and then gifted me a pattern of her favorite shorty pattern. So I'm going to try that on these at some point, hopefully in the not too distant future. So that was really it for acquisitions. Quickly on some Craftivism ideas. First, I wanted to just show you all the samples and the yarn that I have for the first of the End AIDS Knitalongs projects. I don't have all of them yet because we're still far enough away that I haven't gotten everything. But for the first announcement that I mentioned earlier from Melissa Kemmerer of Melissa K Designs and Monica from Up North Yarns, we have the Stars Align hat. So this is a DK weight hat using two contrasting colors of DK weight yarn. I'm going to show you the yarn here in a second. This is using Monica's two colorways. So this is the Stars Align hat, and it matches up with the Star Rider mittens, which I love the striping on that thumb. And when Melissa sent me the sample, she's like, I know the thumb looks weird, but trust me, it fits really, really well. And she's absolutely right. That little crook in the thumb, in addition to keeping the stripes aligned, perfectly fits, at least on my hand. And I don't know which size this is. I think there are 2 adult sizes and 2 kid sizes, but it perfectly fits my thumb. Super cozy. I love this. I've never I have never knit mittens before. I've knit fingerless mitts, but never a full set of mittens. So I'm very excited to try this project out. But you're able to get both the mittens and the hat out of the 2 skeins of DK weight yarn. So the 2 colors that Monica came up with Melissa, the variegated is called Morning Glories, and the speckled is called Speckled Jewels. These are both on her 4-ply DK base, which is a 21.5 micron DK weight yarn, 100% superwash merino, 246 yards per 100 grams. So these were knit by Melissa. So she used the speckles as the band on the hat, and then she used the variegated as the ribbing on the mitten. Monica has knit these up in the reverse. So if you go over to her Instagram feed, you can see she's already finished the hat with the variegated as the brim on the hat. So I think these turned out fantastic. I'm very excited about this project, and I think that these will make wonderful holiday gifts or some very fun charity knitting, which we're going to talk about in a future episode for my upcoming accessories drive for Knit the Rainbow. The other things, I don't have the sample of either the yarn or the patterns for the Cerulean Orchid and Teal Torch Knit collaboration, which is the first of the Crochetalong projects. If I get photos of them before I complete editing this, I will pop them up here. If not, just please check my feed or come back here at a later date when I'm going to have the whole lineup for the Knitalongs and Crochetalongs for the fall edition detailed for you. So I should mention, the yarn from Monica is available now for pre-order through the 7th of August. If you get your pre-orders in by the 7th of August, that will give her enough time to get them dyed and shipped out to you, so you will definitely have them in hand for the September 1 cast on. The set is $60, which includes a portion of the proceeds are going to be donated to AIDS Lifecycle. And then yesterday on our live, Monica indicated that she is also going to match whatever that donation turns out to be. So that is fantastic. The hat and mitt pattern are going to be both available on both Ravelry and on Melissa's website. Everything's going to be linked down below. And these are going to be available a little closer to cast on date. I don't have an exact date for that yet. It may come out in 2 pieces, so you may get be able to purchase the pattern so you can see the materials list, yardages, etc., gauge, things like that, so you can start planning your project. And then closer to the actual cast on date, she will update the pattern with the full pattern. And they are going to be available for, I think, $6 a piece or $8 for the set. In addition, you will need that entry ticket from my coffee page to participate in this Knitalong. It's as I said, there's kind of a mix and match this time around in terms of what needs an entry ticket and what doesn't. But if you just want to be safe, it's $3, and it goes directly. 100% of that goes directly to my AIDS Lifecycle fundraising. So that is the details on that. As we get more details on the pattern releases, I will let everyone know. A couple other things on the Craftivism side. One is an organization called Project Knitwell, and they teach knitting in hospitals and in community settings, primarily in the DC area, trying to bring knitting as a wellness tool to people who are going through a hard time, either medically or for some other reason. And they are looking for volunteers to teach in person, but also looking for volunteers who would be willing to teach virtually. They have a program called, I think it's called Knitting in the Cloud, which are online knitting lessons. And so they're looking for volunteers, so you don't even have to be in the DC area to participate. I think that's a fantastic program. It would be really cool to see that kind of rolled out around the country. To that end, they are also hiring. They're looking for an executive director. It says it could be hybrid, so I don't know that you necessarily have to be in the DC area. But if you have some experience in the nonprofit world and want to combine that with your love of knitting and teaching knitting, maybe go check that out. So that's Project Knitwell. The other one is a yarn fundraiser. So this is from a new to me dyer called Merino E. Vino. I will link to her down below. She is an English teacher by day and a yarn dyer by night, both of things I love. And she has this beautiful yarn called Bright Rainbow, and it is $27 on her Etsy page, and $10 of each skein of her Bright Rainbow yarn gets donated to the Trevor Project. So there were a couple skeins left when I checked, but I think it's a recurring colorway for her. So go check that out and help a fantastic cause like the Trevor Project. And then finally, Comma Chameleon Yarn Co. So not Karma Chameleon, not the Boy George song, but Comma Chameleon Yarn Co. has a colorway called Radical Hope, and 25%, and I'll put a picture of it here, 25% of the proceeds from the sale of the Radical Hope colorway from Comma Chameleon Yarn Co. Gets donated to the National Network of Abortion Funds. So those are just some quick Craftivism ideas that came across my feed in the last couple weeks, and I wanted to pass those on so we can continue to combine our love of crafting and doing some good things in the community. And with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up before my house guests arrive and I have to start entertaining. Thank you so much for joining me, taking some time out of your day to spend it with me, see what I'm working on. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them down below. I love to hear from you, and I'm pretty good about getting back in touch on a timely basis. If you've liked the content, it would mean the world to me if you would hit subscribe and a thumbs up. It helps me to continue to build this community and work within the algorithm. So have a great rest of your week, and I will talk to you in about a fortnight. Take care. Bye.